Hey everybody, this is Sean with Tab Performance, and I'm going to be going through some of the differences between our 212 and 2-2 header systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get both these set up on our 107 stock Road Glide, do a couple sound clips with those, and then we're going to take this exact same two systems and put them on our 114 Street Glide that's got the 468 cam in it, so that way we can hear the sound differences between our two head pipes on a stock bike and a stage 2 setup. So first I want to start off talking about the design of the two systems, what makes it 212 what it is, and what makes it 2-2 system what it is. To start off, I'll keep it pretty elementary, and then we'll kind of build off of into more specific information as we go. So the 2-1-2 system, it's basically a crossover between a 2-1 and a true dual system. On a 2-1 system, basically it starts off as two separate pipes, one for the front and rear cylinder. They stay separate, come together into one section, and they remain in one piece throughout the length of the muffler. A true dual system is different because it has, just like the 2-1, it's got the two pipes for the front and rear cylinder, but these two pipes remain separate throughout the length of the exhaust. So they never meet, they're completely independent of each other. And the 2-1-2 system is basically a crossover between those two systems. So like the other two, they start off as two separate pipes, front and rear cylinder. They come into one, just like they do on the 2-1 system. Where this is different, however, we do have a kick out here that kicks it off to the left hand side. So it starts off as two, comes together as one, splits off to two again. And this 2-1-2 system is actually how all the newer touring models come. They come with a stock head pipe with this same design with a catalytic converter in the collection chamber right there. It's for good reason too, because essentially these things have a good balance of performance. So when I talk about performance, I'm talking about low end torque and horsepower, and these have a good balance of those two things. It's not going to be the best of both worlds, but you're going to get a good mixture of those two performance aspects. Alright, moving on to our 2-2 system. It's a little bit different, as you can tell, completely different look than our 2-1-2. It does have the appearance of what many true dual systems look like. I've already mentioned what a true dual system is. It's basically two separate cylinders, or two separate pipes for each cylinder, that remain independent throughout the length of the exhaust system. And although it looks like that, we do have a hidden interconnect, chamber, H-pipe, whatever you want to call it, So although it has the appearance of a true dual, these pipes are not actually truly independent of one another because of this section right here. And one thing I'm going to get into here in a little bit is the design of these two. Even though they look very different, they both allow the cylinders to work together in some type of way. On the 2 and a 2, it's with our hidden interconnect that balances the exhaust pulses coming down out of both cylinders. And that same job is done on this single cylinder or single collection chamber on our 212 system. So the performance is actually going to be pretty similar between the two, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Alright, before I get into the performance side of things, I do want to talk about the visual differences of the two headers, what they're actually going to look like on the bike. So our 212 system, it actually reuses the stock heat shields. So it's not going to come with heat shields. It reuses the stock cross under, and since we don't have to include those, it actually helps keep the price pretty low. So it's a pretty cost-effective aftermarket header. So essentially you'll get the sound and performance increase of what an aftermarket header has to offer. It just won't look like you do because it will look completely stock when it's installed. The 212 is a good option for sleeper bikes, budget builds, and for customers who are looking to reuse, maybe you have a CVO, you have those special CVO heat shields. You can reuse those and keep that factory look with this header. Moving on to the 2 into 2 system, as I mentioned, it does have the appearance of a true dual, so this is going to completely change the look of the bike. You can get it in either chrome or black heat shields. It's a popular option for customers who are looking to change the color theme of their bike. Maybe they have a chromed out black bike and they're looking to black it out. This is just an easy way to do it because it does come with your choice of heat shields. Because our 212 system doesn't come with new heat shields, the 2 into 2 system is probably the better option if you're looking to change the color theme of your bike. You can get your stock heat shields coated or plated or buy new ones, but the time and money you spend getting that done is going to make up for the price difference between the two. So if that's one of your goals, save yourself some time and effort and just go with this one initially. Alright, now that we've talked about some of the visual differences between the two systems we have here, I'll get into one of the more popular questions, and that's what do they sound like, which one's louder, which one's more unique. And from the videos you can tell that there is a sound difference between the two. To me, it's not that big. I wouldn't call it a defining difference between the two. So honestly, I think the 212 is a little bit deeper. The 2 into 2 might have a little bit more pop, especially on D-cell, but I wouldn't let the sound difference between the two change my decision on what I was going to buy. If I was going to go with the 2 into 2 for one reason, I wouldn't go with the 212 because I thought that one produced any better sound or anything like that. Everybody's a little bit different, but to me the sound difference wasn't huge, so I'll let you make that decision based on the videos. Alright, so now we'll get into another common question that we get about the two systems is which one performs better, and the answer to that question honestly depends on the RPM range that you'll like to ride in, so I'll get into that here in a second. But I've already mentioned that these actually perform very similar, and that's because of our hidden interconnect on our 2 into 2 and the single pipe on our 212 just before it splits out to 2. And these two, although they look very different, perform a similar function. So essentially what happens is on your exhaust stroke, your piston pushes out the exhaust out of the valve down into the exhaust system, and this creates exhaust pulses. And these two systems here are interconnect, and the one cylinder or the one pipe on the 212, they allow those pulses to balance out. And when you can get those pulses to balance evenly, it helps pull out the exhaust more quickly. And when the exhaust is pulling out more quickly, it also helps force in or pull in a greater amount of air when your valves are on overlap. And this is essentially known as a scavenging effect. You'll hear people talk about positive and negative pressure waves, but the meat and potatoes of that is when this cylinder is on the exhaust stroke, it sends the exhaust down. And since they're connected, the pressure in the velocity of that exhaust stroke is going to help pull out and get rid of the exhaust more quickly and more efficiently on the other cylinder. And while it's doing that, the piston's coming up, and then the valves are on overlap at the top of the exhaust stroke. And since that exhaust velocity is already pulling air out, when the intake valve opens up, it helps pull in more air than you would be if you didn't have that scavenging effect. And this scavenging effect is very important for good low-end performance, and our 212 system actually does a little bit better job of this scavenging effect just by the way it's designed. So our 212 tends to perform a little bit better on the low end, whereas on our 2-2 system, it tends to do a little bit better in the mid-range to the upper RPMs, and that's also because it does have a fully rounded cross-under section that just helps maintain the flow, so you get good mid-range and good upper end performance. And on this one, it's more towards the bottom end and mid-range performance, and that's not to say that this one performs bad on the bottom end and this one performs bad on the top end. Although there is a performance difference, that will definitely show up if you're comparing the same systems on a dyno chart, but I don't know if it's a big enough difference to actually feel while you ride. So just keep that in mind. Although there is a performance difference, it's not going to be a night and day difference between the two. All right, and sticking with the theme of performance here, another common question that we get about our 212 system is, why is there more exhaust coming out my right-hand muffler than there is the left? So what happens is the customer will get this installed, they'll go around behind the bike to hear what it sounds like, and they'll put their hands behind the exhaust and they'll feel more exhaust coming out the right-hand muffler than the left. And this is essentially by design. At lower RPMs, the 212 system performs and acts very similar to a 2-1. That's why this has a little bit better low-end performance than the 2-2. So when the bike is idling, the RPMs are essentially as low as can be, and the amount of exhaust volume and velocity does not require the added flow of the left-hand muffler. Now, the more RPMs you give your bike, the faster you spin it up, eventually that right-hand side does get overloaded, and when that happens, it gets kicked out to the left. And this added flow to the left-hand side, this is what helps maintain your mid-range performance. So if this has happened to you, where you feel more exhaust coming out the right-hand muffler, the header's not malfunctioning, again, it's by design, and the more RPMs you give it, the more balanced it becomes. All right, last thing I'll talk about is the ease of install between the two. The 212, it's pretty straightforward since it's designed off the stock design and reads the stock heat shields and the stock cross under. It's really no different than installing the stock head pipe. So if you have the right tools, know exactly what you're doing, you can get it done in about a half an hour. It does come with everything you need. Any stock component that you're not reusing, it will come with that. So it comes with new gaskets and wideband and narrowband O2 sensor bungs. Whichever ones you're not using, you'll just go ahead and plug those up. Alright, moving on to the 2-2 system. Again, it's pretty straightforward, but it is a little bit more involved than our 212. Since we do send out a new fully round cross under section, it does have a new bracket that needs to be installed. Also, along here where it mounts to the side of the bike and the transmission cover, it's got a different mounting position than what is used on the stock one, so that one does take a little bit of time to do. Again, on this one, it's going to come with everything that you need that you're not reusing. So it's going to come with new gaskets, your choice of heat shields, wideband and narrowband O2 sensor bungs, plugs, I guess I should say, and then it's going to come with the cross under clamp, cross under, and everything you'll need. All right, a couple quick things before I go. One thing that we've been hearing back from our dealerships, some things that they like about it, is the wideband O2 sensor placement. Essentially on either one of these two, you can have these completely installed, heat shields and everything, and you can install and remove the O2 sensors without having to take these or remove anything on the bike, which is very important and make things a lot quicker if you're doing dyno work or anything like that. It will save a little bit on shop time for the customer as well. So just a couple things that make installation a little bit easier for the technician or whoever's doing anything with the narrowband O2 sensors. Alright, so we've talked about some of the performance differences between the two, but the main thing to keep in mind is that although they look pretty different, both of them will be able to achieve whatever performance goal you're after. So both of these have been applied to any stage. So stage 1, stage 2, big bore kits, the 131 kit. So don't let the smaller price standpoint of this one deter you from getting it because you think it's not going to perform as well as our 2-2 system, and don't let this more expensive system leads you to believe that it's going to outperform this one by a night and day margin. Basically, those are the main differences between the two head pipes. There's a pretty good description for each one of these listed on our website, so if you need some more information, just check those out. If you have any questions that I didn't answer in the video, you can comment them down below and we'll get to them. Also be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram because we do have different videos and sound clips for both of these. But other than that, I will see you guys next time.